The sound of strangers walking through my living room will haunt me for the rest of my life. That's how it began, the morning I realized my home was no longer mine. I remember the thud of boots on the wooden floor I'd waxed every Sunday for 32 years, the smell of foreign perfume mixing with the faint citrus polish, the low murmur of voices discussing square footage, my kitchen, my memories, reduced to real estate jargon. I stood in the hallway clutching my coffee mug, my hands trembling so badly the porcelain clinked against my wedding ring. A young couple wandered through the archway, the woman pointing at my dining room walls, saying, "This could be perfect for the nursery." They were talking about my dining room, the one where my late husband and I celebrated our last anniversary before the cancer took him. The one where I'd rocked my grandson to sleep when my son's wife Emma said she needed a nap. I wanted to scream, to tell them to leave, that this wasn't an open house. But my throat froze. Because in that instant, I saw Emma's silhouette in the doorway, calm, poised, holding a folder of documents. Her smile was soft, practiced. "Morning, Mom," she said, as if nothing were wrong. And suddenly, the world tilted. If you had told me then that I'd lose the only place that ever felt safe, I would have laughed and offered you tea. I was 62, widowed, and proud of how I'd managed things since Martin passed away. The house was paid off, my garden was thriving, and I'd recently refinished the kitchen cabinets myself, white with brass handles that gleamed in the morning light. My son, Daniel, visited every weekend with Emma and their 2 children. Emma was charming in a way that drew people in. She had the kind of beauty that made others lower their guard, big brown eyes, soft voice, always offering to help clear the dishes. She called me Mom even before she married Daniel. I liked that. When they first moved back to town, I was thrilled. Daniel had lost his job during the tech layoffs, and Emma suggested they stay with me just for a few months until we get back on our feet. I remember the exact words I said. "Of course. This is your home too." I meant it. I truly did. The first weeks were almost joyful, laughter echoing in the halls again, the children chasing the cat, the smell of Emma's cinnamon coffee in the mornings. She and I cooked together, her spaghetti sauce bubbling beside my stew. She called me her kitchen mentor. But little moments began to shift, small, almost invisible fractures. It started with the mail. One afternoon, I noticed envelopes addressed to Mrs. Emma Collins, homeowner. At first, I thought it was a clerical mistake. I asked casually, "Emma, did you use my address for something?" She laughed lightly. "Oh, just a delivery form, Mom. You know how these online sites mix up details." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes didn't meet mine. A week later, the Wi-Fi account notification came not in Daniel's or my name, but hers. The new plan, the upgraded service, all billed under Emma Collins, primary resident. I told myself it was harmless technology stuff, young people like things in their name. But something about it lodged in my chest. In those early mornings before anyone woke up, I used to sit on the porch with my tea, watching the sun turn the roses pink. That porch had been my sanctuary through widowhood. But one morning, I stepped outside and found Emma on the phone, pacing, her voice low. "No, it's been appraised already. Yes, she's still here, but the paperwork's done. Just waiting on signatures." I froze behind the door. I didn't understand the words, but I recognized the tone, businesslike, transactional. When she saw me, she startled slightly, then smiled. "Oh, hi, Mom. Just talking to Daniel's insurance agent." I nodded, pretending to believe her, even as my stomach twisted. Weeks passed. Emma's confidence in the house grew, like ivy claiming the walls. She rearranged the living room, saying it felt more open this way. She moved my framed wedding photo from the mantel to the upstairs hallway. When I quietly put it back, she laughed. "You're so sentimental, Mom. Let's modernize a little." Daniel, sweet boy that he was, didn't notice. He worked long hours at a warehouse job, coming home late, tired, grateful that his wife kept the household running. If only he knew which direction it was running. The first real crack came the day she brought in her friend from work, a man in a navy suit. "This is Kevin," she said, as I set tea on the table. "He's helping me with some paperwork for our refinancing options." "Our what?" I asked, half laughing. "The mortgage," she said smoothly. "You know, interest rates dropped. We might qualify for better terms." I blinked at her. "Emma, the house is paid off. There's no mortgage to refinance." Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, I mean, I was just checking in case we ever, well, just exploring options." Kevin's eyes flicked toward her, then at me. I saw it, the awkwardness, the awareness. Something was being hidden. I set the teacup down, carefully, deliberately. "There's no need for refinancing. This home is stable." Kevin muttered something about coming back another time and left. Emma exhaled and said I'd embarrassed her. That night, she didn't join us for dinner. I wish I could say I acted then, but trust is a strange thing. When you've spent a lifetime believing family means safety, you doubt yourself before others. I convinced myself I'd overreacted. After all, Emma called me Mom every day. She brought me flowers on Sundays, helped with my medicine, even gave me a silk shawl for my birthday. "You're the heart of this family," she said as she draped it over my shoulders. How easily kindness can mask control. Then came the night of the storm. Thunder rattled the windows. The power went out. I went to check the circuit box in the basement and tripped on something heavy, stacks of cardboard boxes labeled documents and property records. When the flashlight beam landed on the top sheet, I saw my own name printed beside hers, transfer of ownership, conditional agreement. I froze. My fingers shook as I flipped through page after page, legal jargon swimming before my eyes. There were signatures, mine forged, identical loops, but not my hand. The date on the form was 2 weeks earlier. I stumbled upstairs, calling for Daniel. But he wasn't home yet. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, candlelight flickering behind her. "Mom, what are you doing in the basement?" My voice cracked. "What is this, Emma? These papers, why is my name here?" For a brief, unguarded second, her face hardened, cold, calculating. Then she smiled again. "Oh, that's just some draft work Kevin left. It's nothing binding." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the seed of dread had already sprouted. When Daniel came home, drenched from the rain, I pulled him aside. "Son, I think there's something wrong. Emma, she's handling documents about the house. Please, look into it." He sighed, tired. "Mom, please don't start. Emma's just trying to help us financially. You know how she is organized, a little controlling maybe, but she means well." "Daniel." "Mom," he said softly, "I promised Emma I'd handle this. Trust me, okay?" And that's when I realized I was alone in this. Days blurred into uneasy silence. Emma's friendliness cooled. She spoke to me with careful politeness, no warmth. The children began spending more time in her room, their laughter muffled behind closed doors. The mail kept arriving, legal envelopes, bank notices, addressed to her. Then one morning, she asked casually, "Mom, could you sign this authorization? It's just for the maintenance company to update records." I looked at the line she indicated. My name was pre-typed beneath a space for a signature. The heading read, "Authorization to transfer deed for notary processing." I put down the pen. "What maintenance company needs my deed?" I asked quietly. Her face flushed. "You don't understand these things, Mom. It's just procedural." "Then you sign it," I said. Her eyes hardened. "I already have." And that's when I finally understood, whatever she was doing, it wasn't temporary. She was building a new reality, one document at a time. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt foreign, too quiet, too staged. I walked through each room like a ghost, running my fingers along the walls Martin had painted, the cabinets we'd built. I whispered to him in the dark, I tried to be kind. In the morning, I called the county registry office. When the clerk read my address, she paused. "Yes, That property was recently mortgaged and listed under joint ownership, Emma Collins and Daniel Collins. My throat went dry. What about me? Another pause. You're listed as previous owner. Previous. The word hit like a slap. I hung up the phone and felt the room spin. The floorboards creaked beneath me, even the clock seemed louder. When Emma came home that afternoon, I was waiting in the kitchen. Why, Emma? I asked quietly. She didn't pretend this time. She dropped her purse, exhaled, and looked me straight in the eye. Because you wouldn't let go, Mom. This house is rotting under old memories. Daniel and I deserve our own start. You have your pension, you'll be fine. You sold my home, I whispered. She tilted her head. Technically, I refinanced it. But yes, the buyers close next week. Her tone was calm, almost pitying. You'll thank me one day. I felt something inside me break, not anger yet, not grief, just an empty cracking sound where love used to be. I nodded slowly. Then I suppose I should start packing. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in the living room, listening to the ticking clock and the distant hum of cars. The house felt alive, aware, as if it too knew it was being taken apart. I thought of Daniel, my boy who once built pillow forts in this same room. How could he not see what was happening? But I also thought of Emma. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the hunger not just for money but for control. And beneath that, perhaps fear, a woman desperate to prove she belonged. I told myself, you cannot fight fire with fury. You fight it with patience. And that's what I decided to do. The morning after Emma's confession, I woke before dawn. The house was cold, the kind of chill that settles in your bones and makes every movement deliberate. I moved through each room slowly, memorizing it, every photograph, every scuff on the floor, every patch of faded wallpaper Martin had promised to replace but never did. If my home was going to be stolen from me, I wanted to take it with me in memory. I brewed tea, but it tasted metallic. Even the cup felt wrong in my hand. The air carried a faint scent of paint. Emma had been touching up the guest room the night before. But I knew now that wasn't a renovation, it was preparation. I stood by the window, watching dawn seep into the garden. The roses were blooming early, tiny specks of pink in the grey morning. They were my pride, the one thing that always came back no matter how harsh the winter. That's when Daniel came downstairs. His hair was uncombed, his eyes heavy with confusion and something like guilt. Mom, he started, voice hesitant, Emma told me you're upset about some paperwork. I didn't look at him. She sold the house, Daniel. You mortgaged my home behind my back. He rubbed his temples. It's not what you think. We needed to consolidate. The loan. Loan? I interrupted. You put this house up as collateral for your debts. He looked away, and in that silence, I knew the answer. That's how betrayal works. It doesn't announce itself with thunder, it seeps in quietly, wearing the face you love most. Daniel tried to justify it, talking about temporary measures, about restructuring finances. But I saw the truth beneath his words. He wasn't the mastermind. Emma was. And he, poor fool, had been convinced that selling the house was the only way to keep his family afloat. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. He was still my boy. Just lost. In the days that followed, the house turned into a battlefield, though no one raised their voice. Emma was polite, almost tender, as she prepared for the transition. She started cleaning closets, boxing up old items, saying things like, "We'll find a smaller place for you nearby, Mom. Something cozy." Each word was a dagger wrapped in silk. I watched her as one might watch a stranger wearing your child's clothes. She had claimed not just my home, but the rhythm of my life. I didn't fight her directly, not yet. I pretended to cooperate, to pack small boxes, to smile at the children. But every night, after they went to bed, I began my quiet counterattack. I gathered every receipt, every document I could find. I checked dates, signatures, anything that could prove her deceit. And there it was, one line in the mortgage file that made my heart race. Signed by current resident on behalf of owner. She hadn't just forged my name, she'd claimed power of attorney. But there was one problem, I'd never given her that. The next morning, I went to the notary office listed on the form. The clerk, a young man with nervous eyes, shuffled through records. "Yes, I remember this," he said after a moment. "A woman brought papers signed and notarized, said you were her mother, incapacitated." I stared at him. "Did she show any proof of that?" He hesitated. "A doctor's note. Something about limited mobility." It looked legitimate. I felt the room spin. Limited mobility? I was walking, talking, and gardening every day. She had fabricated a medical condition to claim authority over my property. The young man looked guilty. "I'm sorry, Everything seemed in order." I thanked him, though my hands shook. Outside, the sunlight felt cruel. I went home and found Emma in the kitchen, humming softly while slicing apples for the children. "Emma," I said evenly, "where did you get that doctor's note?" Her knife paused mid-slice. "What note?" "The one you used to say I was incapacitated." For a second, her mask cracked. Then she smiled. "Mom, I think you're misunderstanding again." I stepped closer. "Do not lie to me." Her jaw tightened. "I did what I had to do. You wouldn't listen. You hoarded this house like it was a shrine. Daniel's drowning in debt. The kids need stability. I made a choice." My voice dropped to a whisper. "You made a crime." She laughed lightly, though her eyes were sharp. "You won't do anything. Because if this goes public, Daniel goes down too." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. And she was right. That night, I sat alone on the back porch, staring at the dim light in Daniel's room. My son, my own flesh, was trapped in her web. If I reported her, he'd be charged with conspiracy. If I stayed silent, I'd lose everything. Somewhere between those choices, I made a third: I would make her undo it herself. The plan began quietly. I started pretending to forget things. Dates, appointments, even names. Emma thrived on control, so I fed her that illusion. She believed she'd broken me, an old woman losing grip. I let her see me falter, shake, spill tea. She began treating me like a child. "Mom, you shouldn't handle the bills. Let me do it. Mom, don't stress about the house, I'll take care of everything." And I would smile, meekly, nodding. "You're right, dear." But behind that facade, I was learning her every move. I listened when she spoke on the phone, memorized her words, her phrases. I learned that the buyer's closing date was set for 3 weeks from now, and the contract required my original deed signature to finalize. She hadn't realized the registry had flagged one discrepancy. That was my window. One evening, while she was bathing the children, I slipped into her study. The desk drawer had a new lock, but Martin taught me how to handle stubborn bolts years ago. Inside were folders, bank statements, deeds, correspondence, and a single USB drive labeled Final Docs. I plugged it into my old laptop. My breath caught as I opened the folder, scanned documents, forged forms, and one message draft to Kevin. "Once the funds clear, transfer to joint account, then we move out. She'll never know until it's done." I copied everything to my own drive. Then I printed 2 key pages, the false medical note and the forged deed signature. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. The next morning, I went to see an old friend, Gloria, a retired paralegal who used to help Martin during his construction business days. She read the papers, lips tightening. "She committed real estate fraud, honey. And if she used your medical forgery, that's criminal. You can take her down." I hesitated. "But Daniel." Gloria sighed. "Your son will suffer either way, but you can't let her destroy your life. At least protect what's left." Her words sank in like medicine I didn't want to swallow. She helped me draft a notice to the county registrar, halting the property transfer due to disputed ownership and forgery under investigation. It wouldn't undo everything, but it would freeze the sale. 2 days later, Emma came home furious. "Mom," she shouted from the hallway, "first. What did you do?" "The registrar called me. The sale's suspended." I looked up from my knitting, calm. "Oh, that." I spoke with them. "There seems to be confusion about my medical condition." Her eyes blazed. "You're going to ruin everything." "Everything," I repeated softly, "that you built on lies." She paced, wild-eyed, her calm veneer shattered. "You think this makes you noble? You'll lose the house anyway. The bank owns it now." "Maybe," I said. "But you won't live in it either." She froze, chest heaving, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I sat there, heart racing, hands trembling. Power felt strange after so long in helplessness. For a week, the house was silent again, uncomfortably so. Daniel avoided me, torn between loyalty and shame. Emma barely spoke. The children tiptoed around the tension, asking innocent questions that made my heart ache. Then one afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. 2 men in suits stepped out, bank representatives. They introduced themselves politely, explaining that the mortgage payments were already delinquent. Emma appeared, all charm again, claiming she'd handle it. But I noticed one thing: when they asked for documentation, she hesitated. I stepped forward, voice steady. "Gentlemen, I believe there's been fraudulent activity on this account. You'll be receiving documentation from the county office." They exchanged glances, uncertain now. Emma's face went pale. That night, Daniel confronted me again. "Mom, why are you doing this? You're tearing this family apart." I wanted to scream, "She already has." But I simply said, "I'm saving what's left of it." The following days blurred into quiet warfare. Emma tried everything: sweetness, manipulation, guilt. She made Daniel plead on her behalf, promising to fix the payments, to withdraw the sale, to start over. But the county's notice had triggered an audit. Calls came in, questions were asked, and eventually, the bank froze the transaction entirely. The victory should have felt satisfying, but it didn't. The house was still mortgaged. Daniel's credit was ruined. Emma's reputation at work began to crumble once whispers spread. And I felt hollow. Because justice, when it finally comes, rarely feels clean. Then came the knock on the door that changed everything. A police officer stood on the porch. Behind him, 2 investigators. He said gently, "We're here regarding a complaint of document forgery and fraud involving your residence." Emma appeared from the hallway, panic flashing in her eyes. "She's lying. She forged it herself." The officer held up a warrant. "We have verified evidence from the notary office and digital signatures. Mrs. Collins, we'll need you to come with us for questioning." The look she gave me then was unforgettable, equal parts hatred and disbelief. "You did this," she hissed. I said nothing. As they led her out, Daniel followed, pleading with the officers. The children stood at the top of the stairs, confused and frightened. I wanted to comfort them, but I couldn't move. The house was silent again, this time, unbearably so. That night, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the cup of cold tea in front of me. I'd won, in a way. The sale was void, the fraud exposed. But what remained was a ruin of trust, of family, of peace. I thought of Emma, how she once called me Mom with genuine warmth. Maybe she hadn't planned this from the beginning. Maybe desperation had twisted her. I couldn't know. All I knew was that I'd been forced to become someone I didn't recognize, a woman who fought her own family in the courts just to keep a roof over her head. And yet, somewhere deep down, I felt Martin's presence, steady, calm. As if he were saying, "You did what you had to." Weeks passed. Emma was released on bail, pending investigation. Daniel moved into a small apartment with the kids. The house was mine again, legally, at least. But it felt like a shell of itself. The laughter was gone, the warmth extinguished. Every creak reminded me of what it had cost to reclaim it. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I found one of the children's drawings tucked under the sofa. It showed a house, 3 stick figures, and the word home written in crooked letters. There were 4 figures once, I thought. Now there were 3. I sat down and cried for the first time since it began. Not out of anger, but mourning. For the life that used to exist within these walls. The hearing was held on a Wednesday. The courthouse smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and dust, like every place that held too much human sorrow for too long. I sat on the wooden bench, hands clasped, watching the clock tick above the judge's door. Daniel sat a few seats away from me, shoulders hunched, fingers pressed to his forehead. He hadn't looked me in the eye all morning. Emma arrived 5 minutes late, wearing beige like innocence and pearls like penance. Her lawyer trailed behind her, briefcase snapping shut with nervous precision. When the bailiff called her name Emma Collins, charged with forgery, fraud, and perjury under oath the sound of it landed like a funeral bell. I didn't come for revenge. I came because truth needed a witness. When she took the stand, her voice trembled not from remorse, but from calculation. She painted a picture of desperation, debt, fear, the pressure of motherhood, the belief that we were all one family. She said she never meant harm, that she thought I had agreed in spirit, if not on paper. That the doctor's note was a misunderstanding. Every word was polished, rehearsed, drenched in false humility. But her eyes kept darting to me, searching for a sign of forgiveness, or maybe weakness. The judge's expression never changed. When it was my turn to speak, my knees shook as I stood. My voice was quiet, but the silence in the courtroom made it louder. I took her in as my own daughter, I said. I opened my home. I believed kindness could heal what hardship broke. But kindness without boundaries becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. Emma's chin trembled slightly. I don't want vengeance, I continued. I want the truth to matter. I want my son to learn that love doesn't mean blind loyalty. And for the first time in months, Daniel lifted his head. His eyes were wet. The verdict came after lunch. The judge ruled in my favor, ownership of the property returned to me, the forged documents nullified, and Emma sentenced to probation and community service. Her criminal record would stand. It wasn't prison. But it was truth, written in ink that could not be erased. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, asking questions I didn't answer. The wind was sharp, carrying the faint smell of rain. I just wanted to go home. But when I reached the parking lot, Daniel was waiting by my car. He looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders curved inward, eyes tired. "Mom," he said quietly. "I don't even know what to say." "Then don't," I replied softly. He rubbed his hands together. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought we were building something. You were, Daniel. But it wasn't yours to build on someone else's ground." He nodded, swallowing hard. "The kids ask about you. They miss you." That broke something in me, the invisible wall I'd built around my heart. "Tell them Grandma loves them," I said, voice shaking. "And that there's always room for them in her home." He looked at me then, properly. "In your home," he said. And for the first time in months, I saw my son again, not Emma's husband, not a man trapped in lies, just my boy. The weeks after the trial were strange. Neighbors whispered. Some pitied me, others called me brave. The garden, once my sanctuary, became a place of quiet reckoning. I pulled weeds furiously some mornings, as if I could uproot the pain along with them. Emma moved to her sister's apartment in another city. Daniel shared custody of the children and visited once a week. The kids brought drawings, stories, laughter, their innocence untouched by the storm. But the house needed cleansing. Not physically, though I repainted, rearranged, even replaced the curtains, but spiritually. I found myself talking to Martin more often, out loud this time. Did I do right? I asked one evening, standing by his old armchair. Would you have fought this way? The room was silent except for the ticking clock. But in that silence, I felt peace. One Sunday, I invited Daniel and the kids for lunch. I cooked everything from scratch: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, lemon pie, the works. When they arrived, the children ran in shouting, "Grandma," and wrapped their arms around my waist. Their laughter filled the house like sunlight pouring through open windows. Daniel stood by the doorway, hesitating. "Come in," I said, smiling. "It's still your home too, when you want it to be." He stepped inside slowly, looking around at the freshly painted walls. "You changed the place," he murmured. "Yes," I said. It was time for new colors. As we ate, there were pauses, awkward at first, then softer. The kids talked about school, their cat, a drawing contest. Life, in its ordinary way, stitched small repairs across the silence. After dessert, Daniel stayed behind while the children played in the yard. "Mom," he said quietly, "I filed for divorce." I looked at him for a long moment. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I realized love can't grow where deceit lives. I think she needs help I can't give her." There was no triumph in his tone, just exhaustion and acceptance. I reached across the table and held his hand. "Then you'll rebuild. Just don't lose your kindness in the process." He smiled faintly. "I think I get that from you." That night, after they left, I sat on the porch again. The roses swayed gently under the porch light, their petals glistening from the dew. The house no longer felt like a prison of memories. It felt earned. Not because of ownership papers, but because I had fought to protect its soul. And in protecting it, I had reclaimed my own. A few months later, I attended Emma's sentencing follow-up. She'd completed her community service at a shelter for single mothers. When our eyes met across the courtroom, there was no hatred left, just a quiet, exhausted understanding. After the hearing, she approached me outside. "Mrs. Collins," she said softly, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long time. She looked thinner, older. Life had stripped away the shine and left something raw, almost human. "Emma," I said, "I don't hate you. But I hope you learn that stability built on lies always collapses. You hurt me, yes. But you hurt yourself more." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know." And for a brief, fleeting moment, I saw not a villain, but a broken woman who had reached too high for control and lost everything. I nodded. "Take care of yourself. For the children's sake." Then I turned and walked away, not with victory, but with peace. That evening, I returned home and opened the windows. The wind carried the scent of rain and freshly cut grass. The air felt lighter. On the mantel sat a photo of Martin and me, taken years ago. I dusted it gently and smiled. "You'd laugh at how stubborn I was," I whispered. "But I think you'd be proud." I looked around the room, the worn furniture, the ticking clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and realized that healing doesn't come with fanfare. It comes in small, quiet ways. The sound of laughter returning, the warmth of sunlight through clean curtains, the steady beat of one's own heart after the storm. The following weekend, I hosted a small neighborhood gathering, something I hadn't done since Martin's passing. People came with casseroles, pies, warm smiles, and curious glances. We sat on the porch, shared stories, and watched the children chase fireflies across the lawn. When night fell, Daniel stood up to thank everyone for being there for Mom. His voice cracked a little, and I felt tears sting my eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The house, my house, was alive again. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I walked through each room slowly, the kitchen, the living room, the hallway lined with family photos. I paused in front of one picture, Emma, Daniel, and the kids, taken during a happier time. I almost took it down. Then I stopped. Because even the painful chapters are part of the story. I left it there. There's something about silence after a storm. It isn't empty. It's full. Full of things that survived, of things that refused to be broken. That's what my home felt like that autumn morning. Not quiet, but alive again. The air carried the faint scent of cinnamon from the kitchen, sunlight pooled on the dining table, and somewhere in the backyard, my grandson's laughter floated through the open window. I was baking apple pie, the same recipe my mother taught me when I was 17. The crust bubbled at the edges. The radio played an old tune. The clock ticked softly, steady and kind. It had been nearly a year since the hearing. Emma had moved to another state to start fresh. Daniel had found a stable job and was slowly rebuilding his credit. He brought the children every other weekend, and when they came, the house filled with warmth again. The pain of what happened still lived in me, but like an old scar, it no longer ached. It simply reminded me of where I'd been cut, and how I healed. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat in the garden, Daniel asked, "Do you ever regret fighting back, Mom? I mean, going through all that?" I looked up from pruning the roses. The sunlight caught the thorns, making them glimmer like tiny blades. "No," I said. "I regret trusting without limits. But not standing up when it mattered." He nodded slowly. "I think I finally understand that now." I smiled. "We teach people how to treat us, Daniel. Even our own children. Especially our own children." He exhaled, the weight of guilt softening into gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never could," I said. "You're my son. And family isn't what we take from each other, it's what we protect." He looked at the roses and murmured, "They're blooming again." "They always do," I replied. When everyone left that evening, I lingered in the garden. The sky turned gold, then violet. The world was soft, forgiving. I closed my eyes and thought of Martin, his laughter, his steady hands, his quiet strength. For so long after his passing, I believed I'd never feel safe again. Then I built my safety around others, around Daniel, around Emma, around this house. But safety, I learned, isn't a place or a person. It's a decision. It's the decision to keep standing, even when everything you built collapses under you. The following months flowed gently. I started volunteering at a community legal aid group, not as a lawyer, of course, but as a counselor for women who'd lost homes or been deceived by those they trusted. I told them what I wish someone had told me. That being kind doesn't mean being blind. That forgiveness doesn't mean surrender. And that no one, not even family, has the right to make you doubt your own worth. Some of the women cried. Some held my hands in silence. One said, "I wish I had your courage." And I told her, "You do. You just haven't had to use it yet." That winter, I decided to renovate the house, not for resale, not for anyone's approval, but for myself. I replaced the old beige paint with soft cream and sage green. I refinished the staircase, restoring the shine Martin had once loved. And in the living room, I hung a new photo, me, Daniel, and the grandchildren, sitting in front of the garden. When I stepped back to look at it, I noticed something in my smile, something I hadn't seen in years. Peace. But healing isn't a straight road. One night, I received a letter from Emma. The envelope was neat, her handwriting small and careful. "Dear Mom, I know I don't have the right to call you that anymore, but I wanted to write. I'm rebuilding my life, piece by piece. I've been attending counseling, working at a shelter, helping women find safe housing. It's strange, but I think I finally understand what you tried to teach me, the difference between owning something and belonging somewhere. I ruined that chance with you. I'll always be sorry. Please tell Daniel I'm proud of him. And thank you for showing me what integrity looks like, even when I didn't deserve it." I read it twice. Then again. And though my eyes blurred with tears, I smiled. Because sometimes, remorse is the only apology that matters. Spring arrived with quiet grace. The garden thrived again, lavender along the fence, tulips by the walkway, and my roses, always my roses, towering higher than ever. One afternoon, I sat on the porch swing, sipping tea, when my granddaughter climbed onto my lap. "Grandma," she said, "why do you love this house so much?" I looked at her, at her small fingers tracing the grain of the old wooden armrest. "Because," I said softly, "it's where I learned who I am." "Who are you?" she asked, innocent eyes wide. "I'm someone who's loved deeply," I said. "And survived it." She thought for a moment, then grinned. "You're strong." I kissed her forehead. "So are you. Never forget that." As evening fell, Daniel joined us on the porch. He had paint on his jeans and tiredness in his smile. "I brought something for you," he said, handing me a small wrapped box. Inside was a brass nameplate engraved with the words, "The Collins Home, established in love, restored in strength." I laughed through my tears. "It's perfect." He helped me screw it onto the front gate, right beside the roses. When it caught the sunset, it gleamed like gold. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I walked barefoot through the house, each step echoing softly against the wooden floors. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and new beginnings. In the hallway, I paused by that old photo of all of us before everything fell apart. I didn't take it down. Instead, I placed a candle beside it and whispered a quiet prayer, not of bitterness, but of gratitude. Because even betrayal, painful as it is, had become a strange kind of teacher. It taught me the difference between holding on and letting go. Between ownership and belonging. Between being needed and being respected. The next morning, I woke early and watched the sunrise from my kitchen window. The sky turned from lavender to gold, casting long beams of light across the table. The house creaked softly as if stretching awake. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted by it. I felt held by it. I brewed tea, black, strong, with a hint of honey, and whispered to the quiet room, "We made it." Later that day, I recorded something for the local community group. They'd asked me to speak on resilience, how to start over when everything you trust crumbles. I sat before the small camera, took a deep breath, and began. "They say a house is just bricks and walls. But for some of us, it's where our stories live. I once thought losing my home would break me. Instead, it showed me how strong I was. It showed me that dignity isn't about what you own, it's about what you refuse to surrender. Sometimes, the people you love most will betray you. Sometimes, you'll have to stand alone, trembling, against what feels impossible. But trust this, the truth has a quiet power. It may take time, but it always finds its way to light. And when it does, it won't just set you free, it will rebuild you." When I finished, there was a long silence. Then the woman filming wiped her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. I smiled. "No," I said softly. "Thank you for listening." That evening, I sat outside once more, the same porch where this story began. The garden shimmered under the soft hum of crickets. The stars blinked like secrets shared only with the night. I thought of everything that had happened, the betrayal, the fight, the courtroom, the healing, and realized that, somehow, it all led here. To peace. To purpose. To the woman I'd become. I know now that life doesn't end with loss. It reshapes itself around it. I used to think home was something you could lose. Now I know it's something you carry inside you. And though this house nearly became my downfall, it also became my redemption. Because when someone tried to take everything from me, I found something stronger than walls or deeds or signatures. I found myself. Closing audience connection. When I sit here now, watching the sun set over the garden I fought to keep, I think about all the women who've lost something, trust, love, stability, and wonder if they know how powerful they still are. Maybe that's why I'm telling you this story. Because sometimes we think the battle is about the house, or the marriage, or the money. But it's never really about those things. It's about our voice. And once you reclaim that, no one can ever take it again. So tell me, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have fought to keep what was yours? Let me know in the comments. And remember, it's never too late to rebuild your life, brick by brick, truth by truth, heart by heart.